Ralph Taylor GW2HCJ for basically the Porthmadog and District Amateur Radio Club, but in case anybody else sees it, I'll describe it a bit more, the neighbourhood a bit more. At the moment I'm standing on top of the Quarry Hill at Minforth, looking near enough to the north, with Snowdon just to the left on the skyline and Connect on the right. The home QTH is the white bit down in the middle, which you can see is quite close to a big rock. There's big rocks both sides of me, but luckily, as you can see, I'm not greatly troubled by the neighbours. I've got 11 kV on the pole on the left of the house, but otherwise reasonably clear of wires other than my own. But there is no way out to the horizon for radio waves. All right for HF, but for 2 metres there's one little slot over the Cobb to Porthmadog out to the sea. Home QTH with daughter and dog. The shack's the little black box you see to the left of the house with the black chimney sticking up, and the aerials are on the far end of that block, sticking up again, about to the height, not quite the height of the top of the house actually. Now, out in the shack I have a NASCOM 2 computer which is used for RTTY, and this is the box. It's a home built thing, and as I'll tell you later on, I don't want the RF to be able to get out from the box or to get in from the transmitter, so it's a well screened box, all aluminium, all homemade, and the bits and pieces are going to be assembled into that box with all those holes you see there blanked in with die-cast boxes. The kit of parts is there, two keyboards, the main keyboard and the hex keyboard to the right, the main board, and off to the far right one of the memory boards, various bits of framing and aluminium and tapes and power supplies and things also scattered about. That's the main board. It came as a blank board, a very nice blank board, and everything has to be put on soldered, and they're nearly all solder through eyelets, so I've soldered them all. I don't believe in plated through holes. And there you can see the back of the memory board. The cross-section of some of the tracks was not sufficient for stability, and I've had to parallel some of the things up with wire to reduce the impedance. Looking at the back of the machine, there's the motherboard into which all the various boards plug, and the power supply is off to the left. It's a conventional power supply, not a switching one. The box of tricks beginning to go together in the shack in its present location. You can see that the keyboards have arrived, and you can see the slides in which the boards fit horizontally into the motherboard at the back, and it does in fact work, and that's a little bit of memory displayed on the screen. So in the end all things were very well. Very little trouble actually in getting it together. I had missed one solder joint which took a little bit of finding, but 1 out of thousands. That's the general setup now for RTTY. The NASCOM there with the 2 A4 sheets above it. It's laid out so that a minimum of neck strain. You can look at the keyboard, look at the paper and look at the screen by just a little kink of the neck, and just up and down movement of the head, no sideways movement, and that's a good thing, and that's how all computers should be laid out. The HF gear is to the right, TS 130S with a general coverage receiver above it, microphone amplifier around, scope to the left, the modem above the general coverage receiver, but you'll see that in more detail later. The printer is on the far left, and lots of programs in the racks above. Also some files on the subject. I find you have to keep the paperwork in some sort of order. Looking towards the spot we've just been at, but from nearer the door, you can get some idea of the general shambles of the place. Drawers of tools and oscillators, scopes, and there's the old fella himself. And you can get a general view of the shack. Raymond's pushing his back right against the wall on the far end, so that gives you an idea of the size of it. When we moved in fact, it was a shipping for 6 or 8 calves in it and loads of cow muck, and I dug it out and put a bit of a floor down, but sometimes looking at the floor now it seems much the same as it used to be. That's a very handy angle poised lamp there, by the way, with a big magnifier. The aerial system, there's an angle iron support at the bottom with a top bearing which you can see below the 77 beam. Then there's a 3 element for 10, 15 and 20, and a 10 plus 10 XY. Well, it's not really an XY at the top because the elements are not vertical and horizontal, but 45 degrees either side. The mast itself has 3 bearings, one you can see in the middle of the sky, one just below where you can see, and one down at ground level. And it's all rotated, the whole pole goes round, rotated by a Calgill motor off a wartime aeroplane. Came from a Wellington, I think, off a not a Wellington's graveyard, an aircraft graveyard near Liverpool. The mast is pretty well anchored to Wales, and it's also anchored to the building. Looking at the centre of the antenna system, the crossbar of the 10, 15 and 20 is the end of a 25-foot scaffold pole. It's a special. I believe it was made for Southport Flower Show for the flags. And then going on from there upwards, there's a tubular fiberglass pole which came from an aerial a navigation system or something that used to be on a hilltop near Pwllheli, and they had some nice fiberglass poles, and one of them fell, or some of them fell my way. You can just see the 10XY at the top, which is at 45 degrees to reduce the interaction between the elements and the feeders, which of course have got to go down the pole. And sometimes it's a bit drafty. We are between 2 hills, very close in, and they shelter us from the wind in some directions, but when it comes from other directions it doesn't half blow, as you can see there. They've been up now, I think, probably 3 years, and there's been no adverse effects whatsoever, so I'm quite pleased with that. 77s at the bottom, 10, 15 and 20 in the middle, and 2 metres at the top. I think that's about it for the aerial systems, and we have a slight break now as I go over to there's the slight break. We'll leave the sound on until such time as that's it. Good evening, gents, and all the best. Well, I've been asked to talk to you a lot about RTTY and video. RTTY I know a fair bit about, video I know nothing. But let's have a go at RTTY. You can hear a bit of it in the background. That's genuine 80-metre RTTY, and it's a couple of G3s having a natter. I'll turn it down just a little bit. I can do RTTY on either 2 or the HF bands. That's the transmitter for 2 metres. It's an HC 1400, which has an output of 25 watts, but at the moment it's driving a 100 watt power amp, which is at the other end of the shack. It's feeding the antennas that you've already seen. The HF bands are covered by this lot here. It's a TS130S with an external VFO, second VFO, and an aerial tuning unit and VSWR machine there. That's the communication part of it. Now, what happens on the RTTY is that you get that noise which you hear in the background coming out, which is an alternation between two tones. Whereas Morse is just on and off, RTTY goes from one tone to the other. And RTTY is roughly equivalent in efficiency as a communication medium to CW, but it has the advantage that you can do it on a keyboard and get the results on a screen rather than having to use your ears and the bit in between, which I found very difficult. Now, to separate the two tones and to produce a signal which the computer here can recognise, there are two boxes of tricks up at the top here. One is mainly filters. I'm not using active filters with op amps. I find that the old-fashioned LC filters are a lot easier to control, because you have to have the levels and the gains very accurately set for active filters, and unfortunately signals do vary, so the setting goes to pot. And the bottom half generates the tones and decodes and sends down this bit of stuff here into the computer, which you've already seen pictures of. That's it, that's the same one. It's a NASCOM 2, which has got 32k of memory. Electrically, it's very similar to the BBC Model B. It's got some tricks that the BBC hasn't got, but it doesn't have colour, which is a very grave disadvantage. There are colour cards now, but since I spend most of my time and money on the BBC, this has got to stay black and white. But it works very well, and it's nowadays more or less a dedicated RTTY computer. Don't do anything else with it, really. For the record, that was G3JNJ and G3DWDR that was in communication there. I've turned the gain down so it's stopped reading it, but it would if I turn the gain up. I have to have a reasonable signal going into the decoder, but if you have it loud enough to decode, you won't be able to hear me. I suppose that might be an advantage. But now, if we look at this scope here, you can see that pattern. Unfortunately, the Y-shift network is a bit on the uncertain side at the moment, and so consequently the signal does wander up and down. But you can see basically that there are two signals, one which is an ellipse this way and one which is an ellipse that way, and in a perfect world those would be exactly at right angles, but there must be a difference in Q between the two tuned circuits, and so consequently they're not quite at right angles, but it works very well. You can also see the effect of fading. I don't know whether you'll be able to spot if I turn the brilliance up a little bit more, you can, that's what usually happens, but just have a look if there's anybody else on. This is not pre-arranged, by the way, as it'll be fairly obvious. That's the 45 baud RTTY. Now you can see how those two ellipses are fading in and out, and that's sort of like selective sideband fading. One of those corresponds to a signal that's only 130 cycles away from the other one, but look at the difference in the fading patterns. It's amazing, particularly on 80 at this time of night. That's actually more difference between the two signals than you would normally get, even on a really long distance QSL. Unfortunately 20 seems to be dead tonight, so I can't really do anything on 20 metres. Now that's the receiving part of it, and it's decoded in the computer and appears on the monitor here. GW3ENT and GW3COI. Oh, fancy that. Do we know them, Ray? We do, don't we?
Yes, we do, yes.
Of course we do.
COI, yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's a coincidence. And I do assure you this is not a put-up job. Just turn it up a bit and let it... GW3COI, GW3COI, please K. So that must be 3NT, ENT. Come on. There we are. and they're both on the same frequency. You notice I didn't have to retune. Tracking signal, R-wise. Now that's a tuning signal, it's a universal tuning signal. It's an extremely difficult signal to decode, so it's used for test. It's a polite thing when you start an over to put a bit of RY out so that it gives the chap at the other end a chance to tune in case anything's drifted. It looks as though they've packed it up, but nevertheless there it is. And no. Oh, now there's a... See, things have shifted just a little bit. There's the RY tuning signal coming up. GW3LAD. G... Now that's a misprint there. You're getting some errors. When the thing's fading, it's good evening, that is, not GWMD. Of course, the typing sometimes is no better than mine. Look at the fading, you can see that at the moment. It's going right down to nothing at times. But nevertheless, the other's giving a report of 599 in Abersoch. Now, fancy that. You wouldn't have thought that could have happened. I'm getting thirsty. Well, the luck is on the side of the Angels tonight. Ah, well. 3LAX. I wonder who he is. And John tells us that his name is John, that's COI. And he doesn't know we're doing this tonight, so if he does happen to come to the meeting in a month's time, he won't half be surprised. Well, while we're waiting, the computer, of course, is a very clever thing, but it's, well, it's not clever, no. It's a very good servant, but it hasn't any intelligence. That's what, I shouldn't say it's clever, it isn't. So, before I make it do a particular job, I have to put a program in. And we've now got Cardiff, QTH Cardiff, name is Earn. I haven't got this call sign yet. But the program to put into the computer is stored on tape here, and it only takes about half a minute to put it in. I could have it on disc. I've got discs on the BBC, but here they only use tape. Sometimes I bring the printer down and put it at this side here, and I can get hard copy. And GW3IT now. And there's some more RY. I tune it to get the right sort of picture. And we wait for them to send something. GW3LAD from GW3COI with an extra C in. Now, that's his typing, not that wasn't a transmission error, but it's very easy to do, to pause too long on the key, and then you get a second character going through. I think we've very nearly had an adequate demonstration. Raymond's very patiently at the background here, twiddling all the knobs, and I think we may well have had enough of that. Do you think, Raymond? Or I'll just read this because I don't know whether you can actually read it, whether Raymond's zooming on it. It says, "Okay, Ern, many thanks for the report. Have used this RTTY unit for ages, and I'm a bit rusty. The rig is something or other, running about 45 watts out to a 180 foot antenna. The unit is by Microwave Modules, advertising. I don't mind advertising for them. The picture's still staying reasonably well, but you can see an awful lot of scribble around it at times, and this is multiple path transmission, and it's quite interesting to look at the signals coming. You can very often see meteor pings on the RTTY signals. It's one of the reasons why they're having a lot of trouble with packet radio on 2 meters, by the way. is that, of course, amateurs want to use it at reasonably low signal strength levels, and the meteor pings producing an odd pulse from, well, perhaps hundreds of miles away, are at the moment playing havoc with the packet radio programs. It's all right if the signals are cracking great ones, but of course in amateur use they are not. Now, tuning down from the top end, I heard some ritty and quick brown foxes. Now that's a standard test signal from a station signing UB something, but so far he hasn't said out, OUT. That's Lancashire, not South Walian. So back to you, GW3, oh no, that's John, that is, said out, dear me. GW3LAD from GW3COI. But they're not quite on the same frequency, so I had to retune. Don't imagine I am a whiz kid at typing. This bit is being typed ahead. Ah, now, this is a crafty move. You can have your computer with schizophrenia if you train it properly, so that you can be typing in the answer to a signal, to a QSO, while the thing's still going on. So that's what's happened here. He's put some extras in, and then it comes out at a good old rate. Now, what else have we got on here? Some nights it is not at all active on this band, but I try to put in a regular appearance. I thought you might be a local. You were so strong here. That's John being heard down in Cardiff. Equipment down in Cardiff is an FT757GX, about 80 watts. Now this is what's known as a brag list. I have such a thing built into the computer program. I can just press a couple of keys when I'm transmitting, and that will produce quite a bit of text describing the station. And well, that's Mount Leinster popping up. That's another story. Well, I think I've told you all I know about RTTY now. It's a very efficient, very friendly, and very interesting mode of communication. And I find that a lot of countries will have a go at RTTY, whereas they might not be prepared to speak in English. They'll have a go at typing a bit. They may have a crib card in front of them, I dare say, quite often, but it does mean you can get countries that it's quite difficult to get in other ways. I've worked quite a few. I got a card this morning, you've all got to see that. That's from San Marino, a little republic within Italy, and that's a RTTY card, so I was no end chuffed about that. And I worked him, well, 3 months ago now, and I heard him come on, and so I was the first in with my little, not very much power. But as soon as they'd finished with me, but you should have heard all the other stations descend in a great bunch on him, and I couldn't have got in then. So you do have a bit of luck from time to time. I've worked a few unusual ones, quite a lot of Japanese on 21 and 28. 21's my favourite band at the moment when it's open. Well, I think we must stop this, don't you, Raymond, now at this particular part, and just have a quick look round the rest of the shack?
Right, well.
So, we're going to cut, or what do you are just going to pan around? Well, that was quite an interesting thing, and I do assure you, hand on heart, it wasn't a set-up job. So, what I'll do now, I'll just put a CQ out. It's unlikely that anything will happen, but you never know, and at least you can see the movements that I go through. So to start up with, I switch on the monitor, I switch on the scope, I switch on the computer, the terminal, and the transmitter receiver. All those have got to be switched on. Then put the program from the tape recorder into the computer, and then we're ready to go. Now I've got to turn the wick up a little bit there, and I'm now going to go into transmit mode while doing that. 45 bouts, which is the normal. And then if I go Control FU like that, I'm now transmitting, and just check the signal strength and everything's going out as it should do. Looks okay. And that's the tuning signal, the RY, which I can stop at any time by Control A like that. Now if I could go Control FW, it's overwriting that, but it's sending CQ to GW2HCJ, Ralph. Well, let it send that 3 or 4 times. CQ, CQ to GW2HCJ 3 times, Ralph twice. And it'll send the same thing again. We'll send just once more. And then put Control A on and it'll stop when it gets to the end of the line. Like that. Then I go A, R, K a few times and to receive. Oh, that's a bit of Amtor. No Ritty come back. So we didn't get anything, but that was the movement had to go through. But just to show you the brag list, hey, can you get in on the screen, Roman? If I go, I have to remind myself about this. Z, yes. Control F Z, that's it. Put it into transmit mode, Control F Z, and that should now, don't do it too fast. That's it. It's now going to give the station description here. That's the second receiver that's sitting above the TS130. I'll try it trio, and then over to the right, which I'll show you in a minute, it's an old 1147 wartime direction finding receiver, which is very good. An antenna, a TA2, 10, 15 and 20. A dipole for 40 and 80. That's not quite true now, I haven't got a 40 metre dipole up. Terminal unit is a homebrew. It's mostly the RSGB handbook design. Yes, Hoff ST5. Tuning scopes, little 3 CP1 or a BP1, I'm not sure which. Printer, Centronic 737, that's out of date, it's a 739 now. Microprocessor's a homebrew NASCOM 2. And the RTTY program was written by a mate of mine, 2DVA, Dennis from Frodsham, after the design of GW4 GTE, who was somewhere on the north coast, I don't know exactly where. So, just in case anybody's listening, we'll invite them to reply, but they're not. So that was sending a CQ and getting no answer on RTTY. So I think we'll shut that lot up now. I can do the same sort of thing on 2 meters, but there's not an awful lot of activity around here, as everybody probably know, on 2 metre RTTY. Although in some places a lot of it's heard from the Manchester area, but I wish I could hear it here. Now, I haven't cleared the shack up. I can honestly say this is how it normally is. I don't know whether Raymond would like to zoom around a bit. Where are you? That's a homemade pulse generator up there. On top of it, an insulation test set, and resistance capacity bridge, various files going back many, many years. Don't forget I started this caper in 1938. Programs for this computer, components, and then if we can go around a bit further from the top to the bottom of this great rack here. We're just a bit stuck at the moment, are we? I don't know whether you're interested in this lot, but there's oscillators, power supplies, 100 to 250 meg receiver, home brewed, nice signal generator, very stable. This is the 1147 receiver that was referred to earlier. It's a wartime direction finding receiver, but the Americans that made it would hardly recognise it now, I'm afraid. Starting over here on this one and going up, now what's this, 1124 isn't it? No, 1475, I can never remember. It's an RAF ground station receiver, again very stable, but only from 2 to 20 megs. Makes an extremely fine IF for 2 metre and other converters. Then 216 receiver, that covers from 19 to 157 megs continuously with either AM, FM or CW and with crystal markers, so it's a handy thing for looking round, finding what's going on. Power distribution. Now the antenna distribution system is here. This is for the HF rig. TS130 comes up there. That's grounded it. That's the 10, 15 and 20 beam 80 metre dipole, and this goes off to various, to an artificial load actually for tuning up. Sorted VSWR machines. Now this is for the general switching. The two are connected together, so any of these 5 can be connected to any of those. It's mostly used for experimental things, but this is more interesting behind it, this box there. These are the 2 feeders coming in from the 10XY, which is up top. They're exactly the same length to a millimetre or 2, and they feed into this box, which has got phasing sections in, so that by twiddling the knob I can get horizontal, vertical, left-hand circular or right-hand circular, and that's an artificial load. Going down a bit, general purpose scope, twin beam, quite handy for servicing, and sweep generator. I've only had this a short time. I used to use a lot of them years ago, but had to part with them unfortunately. And this is a plug-in unit, of which there are 2 more up here for different frequency ranges. That one covers the whole of the band 4.5 TV, and this is more or less the FM band, FM broadcast and below, but that's going to be fiddled in the very near future from 120 megs to 150. And this is another one here which is of lower frequency, again very useful for IFs. And then of course we've got to have a filing system. It's no use having a lot of gear if you can't find it. So those are a lot of old photographic developer tins which contain a lot of goodies, and so more goodies there. And behind Raymond is the library and the files of QSL cards. I don't know whether it's worth, don't think it is worth